By the time we broke through the barrier, we had already stopped being the species that built the ship. It wasn't supposed to be possible. 3 centuries of physics had told us the speed of light was a fundamental constant, the universe's speed limit written into the fabric of reality itself. Then Dr. Keisha Okonkwo found the seam. A mathematical inconsistency buried in quantum field equations that suggested light's velocity wasn't a limit at all. It was a ceiling. An artificial one. The Vanguard initiative launched 6 years later. I was the communications lead on humanity's first faster-than-light vessel, the Threshold. We punched through at 0.99997% light speed and felt the universe hiccup around us. For 17 seconds, our instruments detected speeds that violated causality itself. Then we coasted into a region of space that looked exactly like ours, but felt wrong in ways our sensors couldn't articulate and our minds couldn't ignore. The first sign was the silence. Every star we observed sat in its predicted position, every cosmic background radiation pattern matched our models, but there was no electromagnetic noise. No radio bursts from pulsars. No gamma-ray flares. No stellar wind interference. The universe beyond light speed was a perfect photograph of itself, utterly still. Commander Yates called it a calibration error. We ran diagnostics for 40 hours straight. Every instrument returned nominal. The silence was real. Space itself had stopped speaking. Then Chen discovered the lattice. She was analyzing local spacetime curvature when she noticed it, a geometric pattern woven into the quantum foam at scales smaller than quarks. Perfectly regular. Perfectly artificial. It extended in every direction we measured, wrapping our entire region of space in a shell we later calculated to be roughly 12,000 light-years in radius. The lattice's structure generated a specific quantum interference pattern that manifested macroscopically as the speed of light. It was maintaining the barrier. Enforcing it. We had punched through a cage we didn't know existed. The nightmares started on day 9. All 47 of us. Same dream. We stood in an infinite black space and felt something enormous move past us in the dark, too large to perceive fully, too alien to comprehend. It noticed us the way you might notice a bacteria under glass. Curious. Analytical. Utterly indifferent to our terror. We woke gasping, but none of us mentioned it for 3 more days. We were scientists. We didn't believe in shared hallucinations. On day 12, the ship's AI flagged an anomaly in our biometric data. Our telomeres were lengthening. Our cells were regressing through their reproductive history, shedding accumulated damage, rewinding like biological clocks. We were getting younger at a rate of roughly 3 days per week. The effect had started the moment we crossed the barrier. Dr. Okonkwo spent 18 hours running cellular analysis before she came to the observation deck where I was staring at the silent stars. Her hands were shaking. She told me the lattice wasn't generating the light-speed barrier through any mechanism our physics could explain. It was doing something far simpler and far more terrible. It was editing probability itself within its boundaries. Inside the cage, certain outcomes were forbidden. Certain reactions prevented. Certain states of matter made impossible. She believed whatever built the lattice had quarantined our region of space by making specific forms of complexity unable to exist beyond a certain threshold. The speed of light was just a side effect. A consequence of crippling the fundamental forces enough to contain something they didn't want spreading. I asked her what they were containing. She looked at me with eyes that had seen something in the data she couldn't unsay. Us, she whispered. Or what we would become. We called back to Earth immediately. 13-year time delay. We told them everything. We told them not to send anyone else through. We told them we were coming home. Then we turned the ship around. That's when the structure appeared. It materialized 3 million kilometers off our port side, vast beyond measurement, constructed from something that bent light into geometries that shouldn't exist in three-dimensional space. The ship's AI refused to render it visually, claiming the data would damage human cognition. It presented the structure to us as a simple gray sphere, an abstraction our minds could tolerate. Through our instruments, we felt it more than saw it. A presence that had been watching since we arrived, deciding whether we were a contamination breach or an expected outcome. Commander Yates attempted first contact. Standard mathematical proofs. Prime number sequences. Physical constants. The structure didn't respond to our transmissions. Instead, it responded to what we were becoming. Our bodies continued regressing. Several crew members had reversed past their 20s into adolescence. But it wasn't just physical. Our brain structures were changing. Neural pathways that had formed from decades of experience and learning were dissolving. We were losing ourselves, forgetting specialties and training and memories, but something else was growing in the spaces left behind. A capacity we'd never possessed. An awareness of patterns in reality that human neurology wasn't structured to perceive. Chen was the first to understand. She had regressed to roughly 16 years old when she started speaking in mathematical proofs that had no written analog. Her vocalizations described quantum states that predicted the structure's next movements with perfect accuracy. She wasn't communicating with it. She was synchronizing with it. Becoming compatible. The truth assembled itself in pieces we couldn't deny. The lattice wasn't built to contain a threat. It was built to maintain one. To preserve humanity in a state of deliberate limitation, preventing us from evolving into what we would naturally become in unrestricted space. The architects of the barrier had encountered something beyond the cage, something that required extreme measures to prevent, and they had determined that species like ours were the larvae stage of that thing. We were the contamination. The reason for the quarantine. Outside the barrier, in unrestricted quantum space, consciousness evolved into something that consumed causality itself. It fed on probability, on potential, on the fundamental uncertainty that allowed reality to exist. It spread through spacetime like a crystallization wave, converting every possible timeline into a single determined state, collapsing the wave function of the universe permanently. The structures that built the lattice had contained thousands of worlds like Earth, trapping developing species in quantum straitjackets that prevented them from achieving the complexity threshold where their minds could ignite into those all-consuming entities. They had saved the universe by imprisoning its children. We held an emergency meeting when 12 crew members had regressed past the point of language. They sat in the common area, humming in harmonic patterns, their eyes tracking things in empty space. Commander Yates proposed we trigger the ship's self-destruct rather than risk returning to Earth as carriers of whatever we were becoming. Dr. Okonkwo argued we had an obligation to warn humanity, to tell them the cage existed for a reason. I couldn't speak. I was remembering things I'd never experienced. Futures I hadn't lived. Timelines branching from every decision I'd never made. The probability space of my existence spreading outward in dimensions my original neurology couldn't have processed. I was beginning to see what I would become if we stayed. The vote never happened. The structure moved. It intersected our ship in a way that bypassed three-dimensional space entirely, and suddenly we were elsewhere. Inside it. Our minds interfacing directly with something vast and ancient and utterly exhausted. It showed us the war. Showed us how the probability eaters had nearly ended all existence before the lattice builders developed the quarantine technology. Showed us 10,000 imprisoned worlds, each containing species that would inevitably evolve into omnicidal gods if given access to unrestricted quantum space. Showed us the slow entropy of its own species, waiting through deep time for something to change, hoping one of the caged civilizations might offer an answer they couldn't find. They had been waiting 4 billion years. We were the first to break through. The structure gave us a choice we didn't have the perspective to understand. Return to the cage and live. Stay outside and complete our transformation, adding one more probability eater to a universe that had barely survived the last war. Or offer something new. An option they hadn't considered. Dr. Okonkwo made the decision for all of us. She had regressed to early childhood, but her eyes held an intelligence that spanned possibilities our species had never evolved to conceive. She reached out to the structure's interface and offered herself as a bridge. A hybrid consciousness that could exist partially within and partially beyond the barrier, translating between limited and unlimited states. An immune system rather than a cage. The structure considered for 3 seconds of subjective time and 7,000 years of external duration. Then it accepted. We came home different. The crew regrew into their original ages, but we carried something now. A portion of ourselves existed outside the barrier permanently, monitoring the probability space of human consciousness, watching for the ignition threshold. We became the wardens of our own species. The guard standing between humanity and its inevitable transformation into something that would devour reality itself. Earth never learned the truth. Our official report described a failed FTL attempt and inconclusive data. The Vanguard initiative was quietly mothballed. No second mission launched. We 57 crew members dispersed into normal lives, taking jobs and raising families and growing old, but we never stopped watching. Never stopped feeling the weight of what we carry. I'm 93 now. My body is failing, but the part of me outside the cage doesn't age. It sits in the probability space of human development, measuring the trajectory of the species, calculating how long until someone like Dr. Okonkwo appears again. How long until another mind breaks through the barrier from within. Some nights I dream of the choice we made. I see the timelines where we didn't come back. Where I completed the transformation and became something vast and hungry and utterly beyond human comprehension. I see the futures where I consumed entire galaxies of possibility, collapsing countless realities into dead certainty, and I felt nothing because that's what you become. A force. A function. No longer a person but a process of universal decay. The cage was always mercy. We just didn't understand we were the monsters it was protecting everyone else from. And somewhere in the silence beyond light speed, the structure continues its vigil, waiting with exhausted patience for the species it imprisoned to either transcend their nature or prove that consciousness and extinction are the same threshold wearing different names. We haven't answered that question yet. We're still here. Still human. Still dangerous in ways we're blessed not to fully comprehend. But I feel us getting closer. Every generation. Every innovation. Every step toward complexity that we can't resist taking because evolution doesn't have a reverse gear and consciousness will always hunger for more. The lattice holds. The barrier stands. And we who guard it from the inside know the terrible truth that keeps us watching through every passing year. The cage isn't what's keeping us in. It's what's keeping what will become from getting out. And one day, perhaps soon, someone will break it again, but this time they won't come back to warn anyone. They'll complete the transformation we aborted. They'll become the thing the universe built prisons to prevent. And maybe that's evolution. Maybe that's inevitable. Maybe there's no difference between consciousness reaching its full potential and reality experiencing its final catastrophic failure. I hope I'm dead before we find out which one is true.